During the course of the day, we have been treated to a range of presentations covering cities from across the globe, providing different examples in practice of tools and techniques for engaging with communities. As I mentioned at the beginning of the day, the opportunity is there for you to take something that is new, valuable, provocative, inspiring, and to take that back to where you come from, to your city, to your research project. If you have specific questions of the presenters, I would encourage you from now, rather than revisiting the presentations as part of our plenary time together, just sidle up to them as you queue for the buffet at dinner and sit next to them and talk to them tonight. I'd ask you, in the time that we have together now, the 40 minutes or so, to think in broader terms about higher level points that may be relevant to the OWHC itself, to the mayors, to the board, and perhaps recommendations that could be conveyed to the member cities. Before calling for general comments, there are a few people I would like to invite specifically, and the first of those is our keynote speaker, Professor Michael Turner, who provoked us this morning with some very broad-ranging thoughts about issues in community engagement and World Heritage City conservation and management. Professor Turner, would you like to share some thoughts and reflections on what you have heard today?
Thank you so much. My mind is spinning. I've learned so much from so many case studies, and I've been enriched, like I'm sure all of us, with some wonderful interventions. I would like to put a caveat to our moderator's comment of taking it back. I would just like to add, take it back with cultural translations. And I think that it's very important to actually see, when I say translate it into your local language, it is not just simply a literal translation, but to actually create then geocultural meaning. I'd also like to make a mention about Gala, that I also thought I must react to so many things here, but the future belongs to the younger generation, and they've come out wonderfully, and I think they must be congratulated. So I really did a matrix between the 5 points which have been presented here and the 7 points, or which I grouped to 4, which I had spoken about. So I think that what we're reflecting, in fact, is cultural diversity, which is the first point, which is so important. And that is why one size does not fit all on the cultural translation. The second thing is that we have to be relevant. And I think that this was picked up by the presentation on Georgetown, and looking at the Sustainable Development Goals, which our colleague Ege is here and guiding us in this direction. But this is where relevance is taking place. I add to that the New Urban Agenda and extending our understanding of Hull to the debate. The third point I'd like to speak about, to address, is the issue of being a promotion. And the promotion is essentially of local pride. We heard that in Philadelphia, we got it in Cordova, and we also got it in Oaxaca, and where it started with the local people having their own pride. And I think that this is, first of all, what Matthias had said, you want to be World Heritage? No, be yourself, be ourselves, and in that way, people will want to then reflect on globalism. And only in that way we could move to to internationalism, and then brings us on to tourism, which has been raised as a very, very critical problem. And the reason why I link that one to the next point is the dynamics of change. We spoke about, rather than building projects, urban processes or systems, which we were also guided towards, and therefore actually having to manage these changes in incremental, but it is also between the short term and the long term. So I think that this is so important to actually say the promotion is within ourselves, and this is then education and awareness. The fourth point I want to look at is that of research. Both in Quebec and in Philly, they also had connections with the universities. I think this is a very important part, that the universities see the World Heritage Cities or the components as a laboratory, and in this way they can interaction of supporting the community and having a greater say. In this sport, on one hand, the universities are very vocal. We also have to then deal with the communities which have no voice, and that is youth, and that is people who might be marginalized, and these must be looked into, be considered. In this way, we also have the love-hate relationships with the NGOs, and we have to then work out and understand how we're going to deal with the NGOs. People had also said about the is UNESCO going to give us any money? I think we have to get away from this approach. And I think that what we looked in also in Cordoba is the upgrading of the public spaces. And we saw that in Georgetown as well. The upgrading of public spaces then generates then the understanding, the greatness of what people have in their private properties. My last point sort of relates then how we bring together, and I think networking is important, and it's not just simply by region. We have to rethink the regions. We've got to be very careful about using UN or UNESCO regions. Culture developed through seas and not through land. But we do have to use routes, and I think that came up, using routes as networks of connecting people, connecting ideas, and connecting geocultural denominators. So I think that this is then generates even a shadow of serial nominations, and then actually strengthening the networks to be proactive in community engagement. And so people and heritage, it is the human factor has been mentioned, and I think these are the points which I would bring to the table. And I thank you very much for such wonderful interventions which have enriched myself and I'm sure everybody else here. Thank you.
Thank you.